Hey folks, Dr. Mike here with Joey Szatmary at the Lion's Den gym. That is Joey of Zat Strength on YouTube. And Joey has had the unique displeasure of trying the RP training and diet methodologies. He's a few weeks in now. How many weeks?
This will be 6.
6 weeks in. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So he's halfway through his fat loss plan and hypertrophy training plan. And I'm going to ask him a few questions about his training and his diet to sort of get a feel on how he's adjusting. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, but I feel like we first have to address something. That is that Mike and I don't like each other one bit.
It's pretty clear.
The fact that we're this close to each other on a couch is making me very uncomfortable. Hence why I'm keeping my arm to this side of the couch, and he's trying to pop my personal bubble with his hand right here.
Well, like in my defense, this wouldn't be the first thing you did uncomfortably on a couch for money.
Listen, desperate times call for desperate needs.
And aren't these very desperate times?
I'm being resourceful.
So desperate that you began an RP training approach. So this is a lot like the RP male physique templates. If you folks are interested in checking that out, Joey's got a custom program that I helped him develop. And of course, he's been training for a long time, so he had a lot of insight into it as well. What has been the most different thing about this approach to training than the stuff you're typically used to?
Yeah, so just quick background on myself as a competitive strongman athlete at the moment. So the biggest change, I would say, has to do with kind of getting away from only doing the main compound movements a lot, as well as a strongman implements and events. So for me, it was a little uncomfortable at first, probably getting away from that stuff, but we talked and we knew it was a necessary part of the training program to bring me back even stronger when I do get back to competing. So the exercise selection has been different, which would typically be more bodybuilding style movements that you guys are probably familiar with, and lots and lots of volume. You know, the first couple weeks, it was very novel stimulus to myself with being in the 20 plus rep range with some of the exercise that we were doing. But that, like we keep talking about, has been necessary to get the gains that I'm looking for when I do get back into strength programming. So that was by far probably the biggest difference. Something else that was very different, something that you harp all the time, is going to be the technique involved with each of the movements as well. So for me, getting full range of motion on everything and taking out a lot of body English, which looking back was something that I knew I was using a lot of, which is hard to measure, especially when you're trying to stay really consistent with your training. So that was definitely some of the biggest eye-opening things in terms of the program that we would put together.
Yeah. How's the getting used to 3 reps in reserve in the first week? Because basically in the RP programming for hypertrophy, a lot of the stuff, not all of it, a lot of it, what we do is we start them as a cycle at the target is 3 reps away from failure on all working sets. And then you slowly increase weight and or reps, and then eventually you just end up going to failure because you just can't keep getting infinitely strong over the course of 4 or 6 weeks. So that a lot of folks sometimes tend to struggle, or maybe think they'll struggle with judging what is really 3 reps in reserve or even close to that. What was your experience with that?
The thing I would say that helped me out was I had switched all of my training over to RPE based training for a long time prior to this. So it was kind of just flipping around. So if it's 3 reps in reserve, it'd be AKA like an RPE 7 for me. So I found it relatively easy to kind of transition over to, just because I have that background with RPE based training. But I would say, since it was so new to me and I didn't really know where I should be with certain exercise that
Especially
we were doing.
Especially the higher rep ranges.
Yeah, that was going to be the hardest part for me to get used to, but it's not as hard as I think a lot of people make it out to be in their head. And you may agree, we just want to be in that ballpark. So it's it's never going to be perfect. I'm never going to say, oh, that 100%.
2.5.
Yeah, exactly. But as long as we're in that ballpark with the 3 RIR, we're getting the right stimulus for training, and it worked very nicely, I would say, coming from my background, and transitioned really smoothly into the programming.
Because once you get that first week of 3-ish RIR, just the weight and rep increases alone you'll have to get closer and closer
Yeah.
to failure. Like, you can't have been that far off, and eventually you will just get all the way in.
And what's nice too is kind of ending a training block or mesocycle is you get to go basically to failure. So that kind of paints the picture of, where you are, and you have that, wall that you're going to hit. So it's easy to kind of dictate moving forward after that where to go.
For sure. So in addition to that, there's an adjustment where we start with sort of moderate/low numbers of sets, and then the sets are added. How did you take to the set additions? Because there's always a little bit more subjectivity there, where like, should I add a set for this movement next week or not, based on like, okay, did it mess me up a lot? Did I get really sore? Is my performance still increasing? If so, then add a set. If I got really super sore and I didn't even heal on time, my performance is sort of shaky, then maybe I shouldn't add a set. Was there a lot of like consternation there on your behalf of like, oh, should I? Or did you kind of sort of take it easy and fall right into it?
Well, I would say in the past, I have run into the issue where I go too hard, too fast. And it's hard to, go from there with most programs. So starting this, I was more on the conservative side. And I kind of like that. You look at, 2 sets, I'm like, I could do 5. But sticking to the plan in the program, once I got to where we were tracking everything and seeing my fatigue start to kick in, it was a lot easier to manage, and I knew I was ready for a deload. So for me, I like to play it on the safe side. We can always add more. It's hard to take away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's huge. You can't take away fatigue, but with a deload.
Yep.
But if you undertrain a little bit last week, you can always push it a little more.
Yep.
It's kind of like if you go to like a buffet and you get to sit there for 2 hours, like, you can always eat more food if you're still hungry. But if you overeat real fast, then you're just kind of like sitting there for an hour and a half doing a whole lot of nothing. So,
exactly. Yeah. And I learned that lesson early on by just going balls to the walls too much, fatigue myself over the top, and then it kind of held back my progress. So going into this, I was letting, Mike take the steering wheel, and whenever he's like, all right, that's it, that's when we're done. I'd rather have a little bit extra so that I can keep pushing the training as long as I can till the deload was necessary, which ended up actually being perfect for when we did have our deload, because we were tracking everything. We could see the numbers starting to drop a little bit. That's when we knew we're going to hit it hard for that last training week deload, come back fresh. And then this current meso that we've been running has been off to a really good start.
Very cool. How did your rep strength respond on that first mesocycle?
Well, everything has gone up basically in terms of the rep strength, the weights. Something that I keep telling everybody about is I haven't done a lot of these movements in a long time. So my, I guess the SRA that we're doing, and me coming back even stronger has just been through the roof because of how new the movements are, such a different stimulus. And it's so novel to me that I've been getting really great adaptations coming from a very big strength background, changing up completely to this higher volume. I've only been getting stronger. My muscles have only been getting bigger, which is a perfect ideal situation. That is what we're looking for. Yeah. So yeah, it's been good.
As far as like the feel of it and the psychology of it and your motivation for it and the feedback on it, how does this compare to powerlifting and strongman training? Because what I've heard from some people who come from the competitive strength sports is that it's really easy to get super psyched for powerlifting or strongman because it's not a lot of training. It's fun. And you get to hit PRs like right there. It's just on baller lifts, like the compound basics. Like, nobody wants to hit PR on lateral raises, yelling about that. But at the same time, that kind of training sort of eats at your psychology because you can only get up so many times over so many weeks, and then it just crushes you. This is a bit more of a marathon style approach. Did you find that to be the case, or how did you feel about like the...
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it with what you just said. For me, honestly, the change was huge mentally. And it's something that I was excited to do. I think when you get stuck either with an identity of who you are as a strength sport athlete, or you only focused on one type of training, at some point it gets pretty monotonous and it gets tough mentally. And with switching over to something new, I was learning a ton. I was excited to come and train. And at the same time, like the difference is like you had said, it's for the long haul. So coming in, it's like the pace is just a little bit different, I would say, than going for, strength workouts all the time. And I don't know. I just was having it was just fun. You know, we have a good time. We got good
So it
training
wasn't
partners.
boring, because a lot of people say it's boring.
No. I mean, I had a blast doing it. And
Getting pumps is cool too.
yeah, that's something I haven't felt in a while, to be honest with you, is getting a pump like that. Like the difference feeling of, I kind of use the example of when you're doing high volume, there's this burn in your body. It's almost like you're on fire and you can't run away from it. So you just sit there looking at everybody and you're freaking out inside. And it's like, wow, I kind of like this, but I don't like this at all. But then when you lift really heavy deadlifts, it feels like your soul is getting sucked from outside of you, from some sort of weird being that you can't see. So
Soul Sucker. They used to call me that. Was like a couple of movies called The Soul Sucker, volumes 1 through 25.
Dude, yeah. That's Dr. Mike, the Soul Sucker himself. So that's just kind of how I felt about it. But yeah, I was excited. I was motivated to come train. It was so new to me. And it's just been great so far.
Very cool. For folks interested in trying this kind of training, basically switching the gears a little bit more to hypertrophy, do you have any like pieces of advice, especially from folks coming from largely strongman, weightlifting, or powerlifting background like yourself?
I think what I've realized is it's a necessity at some point. And I think a lot of people don't want to maybe do it because they get so caught up in trying to progress their numbers in their main lifts where it just feels uncomfortable, like I had said in the beginning of the video. And for me, I'm just getting excited now because I know that this was such a necessary step for me to come back even stronger with my training. And we were talking about it today. There are some movements that I haven't done in years, and doing them now with the knowledge I have, I know that it's only going to help my main lifts or my strongman lifts and performance through the long haul. And I think people need to think long term, not so much right now and focus on the micro, but macro thinking and being it for the long haul, getting as strong as possible, being smart about your training. And hypertrophy training is absolutely something that needs to be programmed in with your training to make you the best possible athlete.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much for the insight. For the next video, we'll come back with Joey's take on the RP Diet app and his diet journey so far. Folks, see you then.